Okay, well, welcome everyone. This is such a privilege and an honor and a joy to have Rachael Harder with me. She is a sitting member of parliament from Lethbridge, Alberta, no stranger to, especially those of you from Alberta, but increasingly becoming a household name. Rachael, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule today. I know you're helping your constituents like crazy right now in the midst of everything, so thank you.
Thank you, Fatine. It's really good to be here. So thank you.
Great. Well, hey, we're live on Facebook right now. We're using this streaming service so people are able to interact with us. So for those of you that are watching right now, if you have a question for Rachael or a comment, please feel free to put it in the chat. If we don't catch it right now, we'll try to catch it after the fact and just interact with you guys a little bit. But Rachael, so I invited you to come on live today to talk about this issue that you've been flagging. It's an issue I think that is striking a chord, obviously, with a lot of Canadians, something that we all care about, and that's our freedom. So for those perhaps who didn't catch your other videos on your private Facebook page or your I guess it's a public Facebook page, your Member of Parliament Facebook page, you have two videos now that you've posted on this issue. Up to how many views?
We're at about 1.7 million between the two videos.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Wow. So give us a quick recap about what the issue at hand is that you've been flagging.
Absolutely. Yeah. So basically on April 15th, a story broke, the CBC put it out, that the Liberal government was looking at implementing legislation that would basically, make it so that there would be a penalty, I guess, a fine for those who would spread, what they were calling misinformation with regards to COVID-19. And so that was in April, that story broke. And so I thought, wow, that is an imposition on our freedom. And I am not a fan of that. And I don't think Canadians are going to be a fan of that. And so I decided to go public with that and created my first video. And then just recently, on May 11th, in committee, the Minister for Heritage came forward and he said that there was money that was already being, infused or put out there to what he calls, help stop the spread of misinformation with regards to COVID-19. And I thought, wait a minute, without debate in the House of Commons, without any form of discussion, without passing legislation, there's money that is being released from the Liberal coffers to the media in order to stamp out our freedom. I think, the vast majority of us, or many of us, I should say, have had videos sent to us, go check this out on YouTube, or, videos posted on Facebook, and we go to click the link and look at the information that has been sent to us, and all of a sudden it's gone. Or maybe we watch it once and then we send it to a friend and then they go to open it up and it's gone. And so this is the result of places like YouTube and Facebook taking these videos down because of an agenda that is being propagated by the Liberal government.
And you phrased this so well in, I think, both of your videos. You talked about who decides what is truth, especially when we're in this evolving landscape. Research is literally unfolding by the day surrounding a lot of these issues. News stories breaking by the hour, by the second, by the minute. Right. So talk about that.
Sure. I think, with COVID-19 here and impacting our daily lives, certainly the government has implemented numerous policies, communicated numerous expectations. And I'm talking about governments at a federal level, provincial level, municipal level, and I think people are looking at the information that they're being fed by their governments, but also by, the World Health Organization and others. And, I think there's some really fair questions that are being asked by Canadians. And and so they're listening to mainstream media, but they're also wanting access to other media sources or other sources of expertise, other doctors, other epidemiologists. What are other countries doing? And so people want access to this information is what I would be observing, and I think they deserve to have that. Unfortunately, one of the things that this really highlights, Fatine, is the fact that Parliament isn't currently sitting in a regular capacity. And so as a result, then the current government is not being held to account. And so they can do some of these crazy things that are a direct imposition on our freedom as Canadians. John Diefenbaker, former prime minister of this great country, he said, the House of Commons, or Parliament, he said, is more than just procedure. It's the custodian of the nation's freedom. Wow. And so if Parliament ceases to meet, if Parliament stops, which I would say largely it has, then it is actually a direct, the result is that actually our freedoms are no longer being guarded. Our freedoms are no longer being fought for. Democracy is no longer being upheld. It is being weakened, if not, distorted altogether. And I think we're seeing that. And again, Canadians are speaking up, they're speaking out, and rightfully so.
Right. Absolutely. I think everybody watching this, by the way, we've got Tamar from Edmonton. We've got someone from Medicine Hat. It's actually an anonymous post here, and someone else from Kenora. There's people are logging in. So feel free, if you guys have a question or a comment for Rachael, feel free to post it in the chat, and we'll do our best to engage with y'all. Yeah, so we're talking about checks and balances, right, that are seriously limited when Parliament is not seated. Now, but we do have this thing called Facebook, right? We do have this thing called social media. You're getting the word out to Canadians about this, and you've been calling Canadians to email the minister, to email, I'm assuming, their personal member of Parliament as well, and flag this issue. What has the response been to your videos, and what has the response been from the government as people are taking up your admonition to contact them on this issue? Has there been a response there?
Yeah, so one of the things that I firmly believe is that anytime I deliver information, of this nature, I also need to provide an opportunity for action. It's one thing to be informed, but if citizens don't actually take responsibility for the information that they've been granted, if they don't actually do something with that, then, unfortunately, we're not able to accomplish nearly what we need to accomplish. And so one of the things that I've done with both of my videos is I've asked for people to take 1 minute to email one sentence to the minister. It really doesn't take much time at all, less than a minute, one sentence, and that is respect my freedom. Pick up a phone, give a phone call to the office. Again, your message is respect my freedom. This is a freedom that is enshrined in our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, a foundational document of our country. And so we are well within our rights and jurisdiction as Canadians to ask the government to respect this. And, one of the points that I made in my video as to why this is so important, I believe, is because free speech is a part of a free society. And I love my country. I love my country. I could not live in a better country. I'm just so blessed, so fortunate to call Canada home. But the country that we love, the country that we get to live in, the country that we steward for the next generation will not enjoy the health that it traditionally has if we do not take the time to stand up for our freedoms, if we do not take the time to hold the government to account, if we do not take the time to advocate for the protection of democracy. And so that's why I think it is so important for Canadians to act upon the information that they're given rather than simply indulge.
Absolutely. And that would be true whoever was in power, right? So
Absolutely.
Democracy thrives when we're allowed to ask the tough questions. So on that note, you guys have been, meeting as a virtual parliament. I've been seeing some of the videos out there. Has yourself or any of your colleagues in your caucus, have you been able to question the minister on his conduct in this on this issue? Has anybody brought it up in the virtual parliament? What's the response been? And if so, where's the videos too? Could we?
Yeah. So, unfortunately, I haven't had the opportunity to ask the minister about this in Parliament. Our direction in terms of the sitting was already determined by the time I found this story or found out this information and was able to start going public with it. And so I think it's something that we certainly want to continue to hold in front of Canadians, as well as bring to Parliament, hopefully in this coming week.
Okay. Well, and I'm sure you'll be posting that, or your staff will be posting that on your Facebook wall if you get a chance to ask
Absolutely.
that question. We'll be watching that. So on that note, if people want to go and watch your video, they just type in Rachael Harder, MP.
You got it, Rachael Harder, MP, and you can see it on my Facebook page.
Okay, now I'm going to read. There's a couple comments here, Rachel. I don't know if you can
Sure.
see them, but you
Sure.
know, one person here is asking, what is the opposition doing to stop this? Obviously, you've already spoken to that. What can we do? So you've already spoken to that as well, but that's the right question right now. Gary is asking, please ask Trudeau publicly what kind of advice he's received during his meeting with George Soros, a man that's pushing for unrestricted open borders. Well, hey, that's probably another Facebook Live. I don't know if the George Soros question has come up in the virtual parlor. I don't know if you want to wade into that or not. But basically, people are just high-fiving you here. And by the way, if you are watching this Facebook Live right now, you care about the issue of freedom of conscience, freedom of information, then please share this video as well. So, Rachel, in the midst of COVID-19, obviously what is invoking all of this is concern regarding misinformation around COVID-19. Do you have any commentary on that, how the government has responded to information that they've received, whether or not that information is proved, out in terms of what they've been propagating, and how they determine what is true and what isn't surrounding COVID-19?
Right. And that's exactly it, Faitine, is really we have to be asking the question, well, who gets to be the information czar? Like who gets to determine what is accurate and what is inaccurate? What is it, just information and what is misinformation? What is truth and what is not? Who determines that? And how can we be sure that whoever determines that doesn't have an ulterior motive or a side agenda? And these are the types of questions that we need to be asking when an imposition of this sort comes forward. And when I look at the government and the way that they've handled this situation, at first, we said we're not going to close down the borders because we don't need to. It's not that big of a deal. Well, then we found out, actually, no, it is a big deal. It is a big deal, and the borders should be closed down. We were told not to wear masks because masks don't make a difference. Now we're being told, well, actually, no, you should wear masks. It will make a difference. Originally the World Health Organization said, human-to-human contact is not a big deal. Transmission that way doesn't happen. Well, now we found out that is blatantly false. And so given just these three pieces alone, these pieces are all misinformation. These pieces were extremely misleading for the Canadian public. Well, now the government's having to backtrack and say, oh, well, wait a minute, actually, maybe we made some mistakes in terms of propagating this information. Well, fine, then the government should be held accountable to its own standard, which is to say it just spread misinformation. And I would dare say some of the most dangerous misinformation that has been shared with regards to COVID-19. And so what's the accountability for that? What's the accountability for the World Health Organization? What's the accountability for, the Prime Minister of Canada who made the decisions that he did, who propagated the information that he did? What are the accountability measures that are put in place for that?
And these are all very good questions, and I hope you get to ask them next week, Rachel. I really do.
Thanks,
you are somebody, right? Okay. So this is actually a really good question, totally different topic, and maybe I would just love to talk about your observations of getting the country rolling again, coming out of COVID-19, what you're seeing in your own constituency. But this person asks a really good question. So this might be a naive question, but how can the Prime Minister give out so much money without the input of other parties? We know that going into COVID-19, we are pushing $700 billion on the federal debt. That's not even including provincial debt, personal debt. We're probably coming out of this over $1 trillion. Obviously, this wasn't passed in a budget. How can the Prime Minister do that? Do you have some input?
Yeah, again, this is another reason why I would say Parliament needs to resume as soon as possible. I would say that as members of Parliament, we put our name on a ballot and we ran to serve this country. We ran to serve our constituents. And that means that we ran in order to do that job in the good or the bad. Well, right now it's the bad. We have a responsibility. We have a responsibility to be sitting in the House of Commons and engaging in robust debate and being a part of legislation that is moving forward. We have a responsibility as the official opposition to hold the government to account, and the government has a responsibility to put forward good ideas that are going to benefit Canadians and to be held accountable. So, with Parliament not meeting, that is a huge detriment, I believe, to our country and to the Canadian public. It's because of this, in part anyways, that the government has been able to get away with the amount of spending that they've taken on, the amount of deficit that they've incurred just within the last, 8-9 weeks, and so it's just craziness. And at the end of the day, we're watching a government, handing out check after check after check after check, making one promise after another in terms of the money that's going to be handed out to individuals and to businesses. And I would say, at this point, it does seem a little out of control. It seems it doesn't seem like it's well thought out. It doesn't seem like there's really a rhyme or reason to it. It seems quite chaotic, actually. Again, we need to be in the House of Commons. We need to be sitting. We need to be able to hold the government to account. And we need also, somehow for the mainstream media to cover this stuff and help Canadians understand what's going on.
Absolutely.
And at the end of the day, how can the government, continue to do this? Well, they passed one piece of legislation that allowed them kind of a free-for-all in terms of their spending until the end of June. And so they're spending the cupboards bare, and they'll continue to do so.
Wow, it's very, very eye-opening, to say the least. I think what some of our viewers here right now might not realize is that according to most of the economic, tax watchdog groups out there, the average Canadian family is paying 35 to 55, or going into this was paying 35 to 55% of their annual income to taxes and government fees. Now, that's not just income tax, that's your carbon tax, that's your tax at the till. Oh no, I just said the CT word here. So that's all the taxes combined. And so that was going into COVID-19. Now, I don't think anyone, this is one thing I love about Canadians, Rachael, is that they are moderate, they are compassionate, they are intellectual.
Totally.
Nobody's saying that this isn't a time to help people and to watch each other's back. But I also think most Canadians would say this isn't a time for governments to be allowed just to do whatever they want without question, right? Especially when we are already in that scenario of one of the highest tax brackets in the world for a first world nation. So, okay, that was my little rant, but this isn't my so, just want to land this though with a question of just how are you doing? How are you guys doing in Alberta? Obviously going into this, Alberta was already in a tough spot, plummeting oil prices, having a hard time getting the pipelines built. I know I did one interview with a guy from Drayton Valley at that point. This was a few months back, 55% commercial space foreclosure rate. How are you guys doing? And how are your constituents doing?
Yeah, Faitine, I just want to touch base really quick on a point you made with regards to our debt load. And one of the interesting things that came out of committee this week, as I was watching, was the parliamentary budget officer, he actually showed that in the mid-1990s, our debt to GDP ratio was 66.6%. Now, right now, if the government continues to spend the way that it is, we are looking to go well beyond that in terms of our debt to GDP ratio. So coming back then, in the mid-90s, 66.6%, and the Wall Street Journal wrote an article welcoming Canada as an honorary member to the third world. If that was written in the mid-90s, when we were at a ratio of 66.6%, and right now we have a trajectory that is taking us well beyond that, I think Canadians should be rightly concerned in terms of the spending that's taking place. And to your point, absolutely, we should be looking out for our neighbors. We should be looking out for one another. But unfortunately, the current government has made some really disastrous decisions, and well before COVID-19. But coming back to your question, which is very compassionate, I very much appreciate it with regards to Alberta. I think we've been hard hit for quite some time in terms of oil and gas, and just the development of the energy sector, and just an appreciation for it overall across our country. And very sadly, we've been struggling, and with COVID-19, we're struggling all the more. For sure, our energy sector is struggling, but also our second largest sector is agriculture, and I happen to believe that it's our rising superpower, but it's being hit very hard as well. Whether it's our beef producers or our pork producers, our chicken producers, grain producers, potato producers, all parts of the sector are being particularly hard hit right now. And then you add on to that the floods that have taken place in the northern part of our province, and people are losing their homes, people are losing their livelihoods, and I think right now, there's just a lot of grieving taking place in our province right now, and certainly, looking for some hope right now, and certainly seeing the need to pull together as neighbors, and dream for a vibrant future, but also, I think looking for leadership in terms of how do we move from this place into something greater.
Wow. Well, we sure appreciate your voice at the table, at the virtual caucus table, and hopefully sooner rather than later at the physical caucus table in the physical parliament. Hey, talking about power, though, people, they listen to some of this and people just feel hopeless and powerless sometimes. But I just want to remind everybody that's watching this, it's almost 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. You got 7 more hours to pay $15, buy a membership in the Conservative Party so that you have the authority to vote in the upcoming Conservative leadership race. I was saying on a video earlier today, Rachael, Canadians are finicky. We tend to go left for a couple terms and back to right. There is a good chance that whoever wins this Conservative leadership race could be the next Prime Minister of Canada. So I want to encourage all of you guys that are watching this to make sure you have an active membership and that you get ready to vote. You don't have to decide today who you're going to vote for. You just got to have your membership by midnight. Or actually, it's 11:59. Can't even be midnight. It has to be by 11:59 tonight. And then I'm going to encourage you all to do the same thing when the Green Party has their leadership race, and the Liberal Party, and so on and so on. So, Rachael, thank you so much for stepping up to the plate on behalf of our nation to be a public servant. Thank you for being such a courageous voice. We need courageous voices in this hour, articulate voice. And we'll be watching your Facebook as well for updates. Any final words before we end the broadcast?
I'm just so thankful for the opportunity to come and speak to Canadians and to interact with you, Faitine. So thank you so much.
Okay, well, thank you too. And thank you for your good work.
Thank you.